And we'll go ahead and get started in just 1 minute. Very good. Good morning. Mwaramutse. Mwaramutse. Okay. I say that not because I want you to think I speak Kinyarwanda, which I clearly do not, but actually to set a tone that many of us are lifelong learners, right? So as much as I'm learning Kinyarwanda, many of you do not need to, but we are all learning food systems, right? I've been in this space for a few years, and I've never met someone who says that they are a food systems expert, right? This is a new space that's emerged over the years. And a lot of what happens is people say, what are food systems? What does it mean to take a food systems approach? How do we make this real? So our workshop this morning and dialogue across partners is, again, part of a learning journey. So don't feel afraid to be candid about that and to really dig in and be a lifelong learner just as much as I'm very nascent in starting to learn a new language. First, I want to start by acknowledging our dignitaries who are with us this morning. I appreciate the leadership of the Honorable Minister coming from the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, Honorable CEO coming from the Rwanda Development Board. We have Ms. Kumba Sao coming from the UN. We have the Chief Technical Advisor representing the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We have online with us Sir David Nabarro, who we'll turn to in just a minute. We have also His Excellency Ibrahim Mayaki, AU Special Envoy for Food Systems, all joining with us this morning, as well as Stephen Ruzibiza, who will be here shortly from the Private Sector Federation. So a very mixed group, again, across ministries, across stakeholder groups, private sector, implementing partners, producer organizations, and youth. We'll be bringing everyone in over the course of the 2 days. Second, I want to acknowledge my co-moderator. We have Ms. Anisi Ishimwe, who will be moderating with me over the course of 2 days a lot of our sessions, right? And we do this, she's coming from the Africa Food Fellowship. We'll be rotating our time to keep things fresh, to make sure that we're playing a little bit of bad cop, good cop, trying to make sure we're provocative in our discussion, drawing ideas, but also drawing as many voices as possible. And third, I want to acknowledge and appreciate our organizing partners for this event, the institutions who have helped make this possible. Certainly the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, who are really our hosts of this event this morning. They're leading the food systems efforts as the line ministry across government and with the national convener. But we've also had the support of AGRA, of AGRF, the Africa Food Systems Forum, of FAO and the UN agencies, Hingawunguke as a project supported by USAID, and the Food Action Alliance, which is actually where I come from as Executive Director of the Food Action Alliance, which is a partnership platform of 40 institutions globally. We're pleased to be co-hosted by the government of Rwanda and have our headquarters actually here, working closely with the World Economic Forum and others. What brings us all together are really just two things, kind of a recognition that food system transformation is important, but also that we need all stakeholders to take action to make this successful. And the last thing I'll say, just as I tee up the program this morning, why are we here? So we have a few objectives, as you've seen in our materials that we shared around ahead of today. One, the food system stocktake moment is coming up in Rome, July 24 to 26, and it's an opportunity to hear thoughts on the type of report on progress that's going into that, share feedback and ideas, and complement what the government will be taking to that stocktake moment. Second, we really want to progress on a few investment ideas, partnership ideas that bring food systems to life. And we'll be talking about those. We'll also hear from, again, the Honorable Minister, Honorable CEO, and other leaders this morning. We want to understand also the constraints that are holding us back, right? So sometimes we're not seeing as much investment as we would like. We're not seeing the progress that we would like, and it's worth being candid again across stakeholder groups of who needs to take action on what if we're really to achieve our vision together. We want to look at strengthening coordination mechanisms over time. And lastly, we want to meet new people, right? Build new partnerships, broker new relationships to move forward. I'm really excited to be meeting many people for the first time in person today who I've exchanged emails with, connected by phone, and keep doing that over 2 days. And so actually, before we dig into our program, I just want to take 2 minutes and ask you to stand up, say hi to someone next to you who you don't know, and just introduce yourself and where you're coming from again. This is part of brokering relationships again, getting to know someone. And as soon as we'll do that, I'll force you back together and we start our program. Please, 2 minutes. Yeah, we're off to the start. Very good. You have 1 more minute. 1 more minute. Yeah, you're okay. Okay, let me ask that you please start taking your seats again. Please start taking your seats again. Please start taking your seats again, and we will turn to our first speaker, Dr. David Nabarro, in just 1 second. For the technical team, can we put Dr. Nabarro on the screen? The coffee break is at 10:30. You can be looking forward to that. Please take your seats. Dr. Nabarro, we see you. Hopefully you can see us. Welcome. Very good. We're still taking our seats. We'll be with you in just a second. Please take your seats. We can ask them if let me ask CEO if she would rather sit on a panel or speak from the podium. If you want to ask her. Yeah. Please take your seats. Okay, thank you. As you can see, this is actually always the highlight of these workshops, is actually just to talk to each other rather than to listen to some of us. So thank you for that. Hopefully you met some new people, and really we want to now kick off our formal program for the 2 days. Our first speaker joining with us is Sir David Nabarro, who many of you are familiar with, have worked with over time, but many may be meeting David for the first time. David was heavily involved in the UN Food System Summit process, was helping lead on behalf of the Secretariat of the Food System Summit, a piece of food systems dialogues in countries all around the world, deeply engaged here, continues to be engaged with the UN Food System Coordination Hub, helping steward the follow-up to the Food System Summit, and also working deeply with the UN Crisis Response Group. So without further ado, let me turn over to you, Dr. Nabarro, and welcome for your thoughts.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Adam. I'd like to start by greeting honourable ministers who are present in the room, as well as honourable
Recording in progress.
His Excellency Ibrahim Mayaki, the African Union Special Envoy for Food Systems, who's joining from Addis Ababa. And just like to say how delighted I am to be able to be with you today. I immensely enjoyed being in Kigali in September last year for the Africa Green Revolution Forum. I was impressed and I was deeply encouraged by the way people and government in Rwanda are taking up leadership on food systems nationally, continentally, and globally. And I've been able to follow the immense efforts undertaken in Rwanda in advance of the 2021 Food Systems Summit, where an inclusive series of dialogues led to an ambitious national pathway. And I've also been able to participate with some of you in the follow-up. And that's where I'd like to give special credit to Jean-Claude Musabimana, now Minister of Local Government, but he was the national convener for steering the national dialogue process. I'd also like to give a real shout out and encouragement to Eric Gatira, the current national convener, for taking this important work forward. I've got 4 themes. First, working with food systems. Rwanda's experience shows us what working with food systems means in practice. We talk about focusing always on links between people, food, and the planet, and how these links need to be put in place and acted on well before 2030 to give us some chance of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And that means constantly looking at the priority actions that need to be taken now. In Rwanda, you've used a wide-angle lens to look at food. You've basically recognized that food is connected to all the Sustainable Development Goals. You've also implemented at all levels, locally, nationally, and you participated in the Africa regional position. And you do it in ways that constantly is working across sectors in government. Constantly you're involving all stakeholders, and constantly you're combining short and long-term imperatives at the same time. And you're backing up your work with interdisciplinary systems science that you adapt to different settings. That's how you're able to take forward game-changing solutions and to have flagship projects, an absolutely vital requirement for progress in this area. Rwanda was one of the stars among 148 countries that have advanced with food systems dialogues. Rwanda, like others, was developing pathways. Altogether, 120 countries established pathways to food systems of the future. They built on existing policies, but they were able to take a food systems approach. And they've been inspiring documents for national efforts. Many pathways have actually been adapted and updated over time. There's a really big interest now internationally in connecting action on food and agriculture, action on climate, the environment, nutrition, health, resilient livelihoods, women's empowerment, youth engagement, and so much more within countries. And I think there's a recognition that without strategic innovation, flagship initiatives, and learning pilots, it's impossible to advance. Progress is not linear, and pathways have had to be updated given political changes within countries and shifts in the external context. And implementation has not been easy, but it's required special emphasis on policy making, on governance, on mobilizing finance, and on preparing people to do this work and having strong monitoring and evaluation systems. And there is a lot to be done. And the reason why it's got complex is that COVID-19, climate change, violent conflict, and higher costs of living are affecting all people in our world, everywhere. But it's vulnerable people and poor nations that are being hit the hardest. Food, energy, and finance systems are disturbed. Food, energy, and fertilizer and animal feed prices have all gone up. And tens of millions of households in our world during the last 2 years have sunk into deeper poverty and with greater risks of malnutrition and other sequelae of poverty. The situation is not good. There's an increase in the numbers of people who are acutely food insecure. And indeed, the overall outlook for poor countries has worsened, with increases in interest rates within high-income countries, meaning that low-income countries experience currency depreciation and their fiscal space is eroded. And actually, if you look at it in detail, more than 50 countries are now trapped because they're in extreme debt. And the debt repayments mean that they have to reduce their spending on education, health, and the other things that really matter. So this is a crisis situation that's got a lot worse for many low and middle income countries. And food systems transformation is taking place within the context of this global mega crisis. But there's so much room for optimism, particularly in Africa. And that's because we find, as we take stock of progress in preparation for the food system stocktake in Rome at the end of this month, we find that around 100 countries are trying to take food systems seriously. 70 countries have integrated a food systems transformation into national strategies and sectoral plans. And 1/4 of countries are now reflecting food systems in national laws and regulations. But the problem is that for many of these countries, mobilizing the finance and then finding the people in country who can lead on food systems transformation is really very difficult. And that's why, honestly, we do look to Rwanda as a real example and to Africa as the potential leading continent for bringing together stakeholders to maintain a focus on food systems in the widest way possible, and then to mobilize the financial investments that are needed for interconnected multi-stakeholder action towards food systems of the future. This is an important meeting, colleagues, because it comes just before we're going into the stocktake. And I look forward to Rwanda's leadership participating in the stocktake and showing the rest of the world that, yes, food systems is a viable way to move forward. It's the only way to move forward, given the multiple impacts of food on so many aspects of our lives. And you are able to show that it can be done in practice. And I very much hope that development partners will recognize this and offer generous support for your work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Thank you for setting the global context for us so well in terms of the progress that's been made over the time, but really taking this on in a crisis situation. As you said, there's an opportunity not only for the country to lead, but for the continent to potentially lead on this agenda. And so we're pleased, following that global context, now to turn to the African context. We're pleased to have with us His Excellency Ibrahim Mayaki, the African Union Special Envoy for Food Systems. And Dr. Mayaki, we'd like to now turn to you for your reflections on progress and next steps as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests, partners, ladies and gentlemen, and let me recognize my dear friend, Sir David Nabarro. And thank you to the government of Rwanda through the Minister of Agriculture for this invitation. It gives me a great pleasure to join you all at the start of this two-day partner dialogue and workshop hosted by Rwanda's Ministry of Agriculture. Indeed, the theme, accelerating multi-stakeholder alignment for transformation priorities and collective action, is very timely. David reminded us of the stock-taking moment that will take place at the end of July, where we'll be able to assess the progresses that have been made and share best practices and analyze lessons on the implementation processes that have taken place. In January this year, the chair of the African Union Commission appointed me to the role of Special Envoy for Food Systems with a mandate, among other things, to lead and advise multi-stakeholder technical consultations leading to the launching of a continental action plan for rolling out and integrating the African Common Position on Food Systems into new national agricultural investment and development plans. As you all know, sequentially, Africa's agri-food systems transformation started with Maputo in 2003, then Malabo in 2014 opened a systemic approach by looking at agricultural transformation as a multi-sectoral domain and linking agricultural policy to economic policy. These two moments helped us build a common African position on food systems that led us to present it at the UN Food Systems Conference that took place some time back. I want to emphasize, I hear an echo. I want to emphasize this point because there is a continuity in Africa's transformation processes regarding food systems. And that continuity has been based on improving regularly the different frameworks adopted by the African Union. So today, as David mentioned, we are somehow at the forefront of implementing national plans regarding food systems. Now, being at the forefront doesn't mean that we are not facing strong obstacles and constraints. And one critical constraint that we are facing is the one related to data. Most African countries do not have connected data points. And that limitation, as a consequence on policy design, and decision-making processes. Where there is data, it is not shared or shareable within the country and even externally if need be. So that's the first point I would like to emphasize so that we really have a clear sense of what it can constitute as a constraint. Secondly, infrastructure is still very much a national configuration, and even then, it is not consistently advantageous to food systems, whether in terms of physical infrastructure like roads, waterways, railways, or intellectual like data and research institutions, or even financial infrastructure that is inclusive, for example, of women and youth. And thirdly, let me enhance the fact that our continental food systems are not inclusive enough. There is still a gap in the manner in which our food value chains engage with women and youth as different from the male population, and this needs a deliberate interventions. And evidently, the inclusivity of food systems will be linked to the inclusivity of the institutions that we are managing. So inclusive institutions do lead to inclusive food systems. So what does all that mean going forward for our African leaders and for our national and regional development? Going forward, I believe the following are 4 types of investments that are needed. First of all, investment in data. It would be ideal to not only have data that is collected and analyzed consistently, but also data that could be shared for synergistic purposes. Furthermore, safe repositories of this data needs to also be developed, repositories that are owned and managed by countries. Secondly, investment in infrastructure. CADEP and PIDA have for too long been disconnected. And if we want to move towards agri-food systems transformations, they need to be connected as frameworks. So investment in agriculture includes physical, intellectual, and financial infrastructure. You know the limits of our Africa single air transport market and all what has been done up to now. It is moving too slowly. I think we need a stronger political boost in order to make it, to bring implementation at a higher pace. And this is really a priority to link infrastructure and agri-food systems transformation. A recent action plan to accelerate Africa's food systems transformation found that roughly $35 billion, US billion dollars, is needed to develop Africa's physical infrastructure in airports, waterways, ports, railways, etc., to enhance connectivity and take advantage of the African continental free trade area. And this is another connection which is absolutely essential, linking CADEP, PIDA, and CFTA. And as a matter of fact, it's a systemic approach by nature. So how can the load of this investment amount be shared amongst governments, partners, to quicken our regional and national development goals? What about financial infrastructure that helps with de-risking for food systems, or infrastructure that supports research and development and use of intellectual property and ideas to turn food systems around? Third point, investment in human capital. We all know that according to the United Nations, Africa has the youngest population in the world, with just over 70% being under the age of 30, And by 2030, 42% of the global youth population will be African. So yes, we need to invest in human capital, and we can begin with food systems that invite and incentivize the youth to engage and do so sustainably. How? Through access to information, life skills, food value chain inputs, financial resources, markets. Through policies that encourage youth entrepreneurship and livelihood development, and the development of micro, small, and medium enterprises. Let us always remember that when we support small-scale farmers, what we want to do is to empower them so that they become micro, small, and medium entrepreneurs. Now, in terms of investment in partnerships, we know that partnerships and collaboration will get us to the next level. Individual ministries cannot transform our food systems alone. Neither can governments. It will need to be a convergent effort, each with their strong point, and then the collective power of these efforts. Whether from private sector, philanthropies, civil society, or academia, whether from indigenous peoples or from faith-based actors, the working formula may vary from country to country, from region to region, but ultimately, we will need to work together, make concessions, and build consensus. What could this mean for Rwanda? As you all go into the next 2 days of deliberations, it may be worthwhile taking a good look at what Rwanda can leverage, what the government has managed to perfect. One area that is evident is in the advancements made in governance and policy frameworks, and the efficiencies that have emerged from that. Rwanda has been successful in developing context-specific and context-responsive policies that can be leveraged further. Another area is Rwanda's leadership in building a reputation for being an investment hub, a reputation for being an investment hub, and therefore providing an enabling environment for investors and development partners to see themselves as supporters of government priorities and not the contrary. Finally, we cannot ignore the thought leadership that Rwanda is now known for. The government of Rwanda is not shy to explore different ideas, but foster innovation and agility quickly. As I conclude, I wish to encourage that Rwanda becomes a champion for taking what works nationally and sharing it regionally to the point where solutions get adapted to promote regional integration, improve food systems linkages, and gain better and sustainable outcomes for our continent. Once again, thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I wish you fruitful deliberations over the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Dr. Mayaki, for providing that regional context and ideas that we can bring into our discussions here in Rwanda, but also the challenge of ideas that Rwanda can then bring out to the rest of the continent and the world. We now want to turn into the room and turn into then our national context. And so I'm pleased to invite our real host and guest of honor, Honorable Ildefonse Musafiri, the Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, to be able to provide some remarks here this morning. Thank you, Minister.
Honorable CEO of RDB, development partners, say partners because now there are many, I can't name all of them, so because I'm excited to see everyone here, from FAO to ADB to FC to our investors, Ngaunguke and others. So I just want to say all development partners because now I see everybody in the room. Food systems, stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and welcome to this partner dialogue and workshop on food system transformation. I really have a very much pleasure to address this gathering today, and I feel excited. And first of all, I would like to acknowledge and thank the remarks by David Nabarro and Ibrahim Mayaki for setting the tone of this meeting. I think they have all said they are very experienced in this food system transformation from its origin, and they are really heading us where we have to be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for finding your time to honor our invitation today. And as we have seen, as we have been observing around, the world of agriculture is changing, and the language and the practice are also changing. Agriculture investment are changing all toward food systems. It's about being deliberate to promote inclusive, nutritious, sustainable, and resilient food systems. As the Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources and the team, we are fully committed to driving sustainable transformation in our food systems. Today, I join hands with each one of you, which you are also a diverse, dedicated group of stakeholders who are committed to realize this vision of food system transformation. I want to first recognize the collaborative spirit that brings us here today. I commend the significant and diverse contribution of each individual and organization present. Together, we are the architects of Rwanda's nutritious, sustainable, and resilient food systems. Rwanda has made some efforts, and agriculture has been growing annually on average by 5%. And we still remain the second largest contributor to GDP. I think the main export contributor as we speak, and the main major employer. More than 62% of the working population is on agriculture. The recent population and housing census of 2022 has indicated that Rwanda has 2.3 million households in agriculture. That accounts for almost 69% of all households in the country. Because of the essential nature of this sector, our food systems call for special attention, and any disruptions must always be addressed swiftly. And that's why I would like to let you know that, given these facts, and I would like to congratulate you for choosing the right sector to come and support and partner with Rwanda in that context. I want to acknowledge also the pressing challenges linked to the adaptation to climate change, the management of resource constraints, the recent fluctuation of food prices in the global and domestic markets, and the slow adoption of agricultural technologies and best practice, which could relieve the agriculture sector of much of its current pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, the food system dialogue will focus on the themes that are critical for agricultural transformation. We will be soon in some thematic themes, some thematic groups where we'll be discussing issues linked to food systems, such as commercializations and market de-risking, solar-powered irrigation, resilient and efficient land use, digitization, conservation agriculture, youth, inclusion, nutrition, and other relevant factors that are necessary to make efficient and sustainable food systems a domestic reality. Today's workshop is an essential platform that we align our collective national actions on food systems. We must examine our progress critically and propose relevant collective measures where needed. Your active participation, innovative ideas, and the commitment to agreed actions are pivotal in shaping our shared future. The government of Rwanda we are representing here through the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources remains committed to accelerate the transformational agenda of agriculture and national food systems. We are committed to work with all willing partners in boosting our agricultural sector to contribute to the 2030 SDG goal of ending hunger. In conclusion, as we approach the key milestones such as the UN food systems, as the previous speakers have been talking about, they start talking that is taking place in Rome, and the Agriculture Food System Forum, the AGRF, the former AGRF Africa, that will maybe take place in September in Tanzania. So let us use this platform to rally around our shared vision and strengthen our efforts. Let's come together to turn challenges into opportunities in order to create a food-secure future rooted in sustainability, resilience, and prosperity for all. I'm confident that together, which is the route we selected as Rwanda, the multi-stakeholder approach, the multi-ministerial approach, the only way we can overcome, only way we can make the food systems a reality. We can craft a better future for the generations to come. Thank you for your dedication, and I eagerly anticipate to the productive discussions and the collaborative actions that lie ahead. And thank you very much for your kind attention.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anizi, and I'm co-moderating this session with Adam. I'm from the African Food Fellowship. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for your remarks, for setting the stage on why we're here for the next 2 days, for reiterating the importance of collaboration of all the partners in the room, and sharing your commitment to really working with everybody who's here. So as much as you've taken back your seat, I'd like to welcome you again on stage. We're going to be hearing from various ministries and partners. So on that note, I'd like to welcome first Honorable Minister Ildefonse Musafiri back on stage. We'd also like to welcome Claire Kamanzi, who's the CEO of Rwanda Development Board. And then we have Stephen Ruzibiza, who's the CEO of the Private Sector Federation. We also have Ms. Kumba So, who's the country representative of FAO. Sure. And apologies, because I think I'm forgetting one person. We have Dr. Alexis Kawaiza, who's from the Ministry of Commerce and Trade. Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Dr. Alexis, since I almost made the mistake of forgetting inviting you on stage, I'd like to, start with you to hear, your perspective from, the Minister of Commerce. We know that, the role of the private sector in developing trade and commerce cannot really be underscored enough, in its critical role for the continued development and expansion of markets and improved consumer choices. Would like to hear from the ministry. Can you set the stage for the role of commerce, industry, and trade in driving food systems transformation?
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for welcoming me here, representing the Minister of Trade and Industry. It's good that we are here. In fact, when we talk everything in food systems, we mean everyone is plate security in terms of food supply, in terms of also market access to what we are having. But as the Minister of Trade and Industry, our main role in collaboration with all stakeholders and the partners here that you are seeing and present, it's now to connect whatever we have with the market. At the policy level, we can assess this even the figures that we are having. If you look at in the statistics from 2017, 2021, at least in the last 2 years, minus last 2 years, imports at the Africa level for the total import, the agriculture products representing only 31%. And that is if you go to the all details, you can see how even at the regional level, how we are trading, and also that the government we are having. If you go to the details, apart from edible oil, apart from sugar, apart from the rice, the other things are non-agriculture products. And if you go to the figures of what we are spending as the Africans in the global trade for the food, that is huge, yet you can see the gap. There is a lot of to do. In the policy level, and also at the regional dialogue, it's good that we are now being involved and reading also the implementation of this free trade area. But that one requires that you have to be much prepared and also be committed with all stakeholders that we are here at the national level. That will require also that we have to address some of the issues that already are on the market, to access to those markets, also to make it very effective, like trade barriers that we are having. That will require to every country, state members to be committed, and also everyone here to be like advocating on how these things can be happens. If you come to the details, and also how people, private sectors, and even governments in the agriculture sector, how we are prepared, this will require a lot of things, but everyone is aware. There is nothing new. There is infrastructure. There are also capacity building. We are talking more times about the value addition. Today, it's quite going to be very difficult to say that agriculture and the trade in agriculture systems is going to remain as it were in the past. No. Because now, in the global region and the connectivity of the global value chains, it requires that we not be limited only to the what every country is capable of having comparative advantage. Yes, of course, it's okay, but also requires the very additional to see how we can connect. It's no longer to be on the market and be successful because you're having a lot of productivity, high productivity or production. No, it's about how you are prepared even to do a very addition, how you are bringing in like the embedded of the processing technologies to go to the market. I come just to the local context. There are things that we think can help us to solve this issue, also to be contributing much to the food systems. One is the things that you have to address as gaps in market access and distribution. Whatever we are having needs to be at the market. But even if you see the challenges that we are having on the harvesting period, where you can evaluate, we can evaluate ourselves, the systems that can help us, the efficient distribution, so that whatever we are having from the farm can reach to the all segments of the population. That requires infrastructure. That requires that the farmers, war stakeholders, chain actors, move from the production side and think about the market and what the market requires. That also goes with the logistics. that goes also to all this infrastructure that we are talking to move from one food to another end. There again, as the Minister of Trade, that we look for the industry, agro-processing, embedded processing technologies. We look now how we can move by the status that we are at today, and we look for how we can increasing the value addition. And again, this will require also that everyone needs to understand in terms of the what to do. There is a productivity that we need. If now it's not a new thing that we are here and listening about the price and inflation in the food that we're having, that we are facing, not only at the country level, but also at the regional level. That requires a lot of things. But the main things that is behind is how we can increase the productivity. That will require research and development. That will require to be very strategic on what we have to produce, but also that needs also to be like connected at the regional level. I can maybe come back, but whatever we do and whatever we are here as the Minister of Trade, we need also to be engaged in this value chain. I thank very much for the Minister of the Agriculture here in the way we are collaborating today for solving or looking for the solutions of what we are having to solve the issues on the market. But also I can't finish without emphasizing that as the Minister of Trade, we are now collaborating with the FAO to even assessing the national food systems at the country level, so that as we are moving this free trade area at the continental level, as we are moving for also these initiatives, we have to know the gaps that we are having. This assessment of the food systems at country level is engaging more than 17 competent authorities that we are having. We are almost at like 70% of gathering all the information to all sectors and stages of these food systems. And very soon, maybe what we're having, we are expecting to see all these gaps that we're having, be it in the standards, be it in the quality, be it in the processing, be it in the capacity building. All these points, I think it's the role of the all government institutions, private sector and stakeholders who are here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alexis. Before I pass on the words to our next speaker, I like that you just finished by touching on the AFCFTA. I know that Minister Jean Chrysostome has been given a regional mandate of operationalizing the agricultural piece of the AFCFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area regionally. Could you touch on what the successful implementation of the AFCFTA mean in food system transformation in Rwanda, but also regionally?
That is a very interesting point that today we are ready. We are very supportive. We are reading this. The parts that concerning with the agri-food system trading on the continent, negotiations has been ended. And now the current points is now the campaign awareness, how our stakeholders, our players can be aware of what is going on. Today, we are even among of the 7 piloting countries to see how this is feasible, and we are ready. The good enough, we have even putting the first shipment on this market under this framework that is under AFCFTA. Rwanda is moving ahead. We are working with private sectors. We are ready, we are supporting, we are doing campaigning, and even that one has been accomplished. And even we are trying to organize and meet different stakeholders that can be aware and also can be ready to trade on the continental free trade area. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'll come to you, CEO of RDB, Claire. We know that the government continues to play a very instrumental role as an enabling, environment to drive, Rwanda's economic development. Could you share your remarks regarding the role of RDB in integrating this food systems agenda?
Thank you very much, Anizi. And good morning, Honorable Minister, officials, development partners, friends in the room. First of all, I'm very happy to be in this discussion on food systems. I believe that the Rwanda Development Board that is working on driving private sector growth has a role in the discussion on food systems transformation. And maybe I agree on the points that have been, almost spoken about by all the speakers this morning. One of them is that food system transformation is a priority. I think we all know that it is a case. And I think from the Rwanda Development Board, it's also a priority for us as we think about involving private sector in the food systems investment. We also take that as a key priority. I think the second thing that has been emphasized is the importance of multi-sector approach towards transforming the food system. And that's really important from where we see this as well as Rwanda Development Board. So maybe three things that I want to just come back to, which I think is really important and which we see as a role that we can play as RDB. I think the first one is identifying, facilitating, and supporting investments to happen in the country. We believe that as development partners or as government, we all have a role to play, but we really need to make sure that the private sector comes in and plays its role as well, brings their resources, brings their knowledge, but also leverages on the environment that the government places, as well as the environment that development partners are supporting governments to put in place. And we've seen over the last 5 years, for example, between 2018 and 2022, the agriculture sector and agro-processing has been one of the sectors that has attracted the most investments in Rwanda. We attracted investments of about $1.4 billion between 2018 and 2025, which is a 5-year period. And if you look at some of the investments in that list, you see about, first of all, 40,000 jobs that are going to be created, which are productive jobs and more decent jobs than we have, for example, for subsistence. We also see that some of them will actually play a role in transforming our food systems, and we very much want to facilitate them to do that. For example, the 1 Acre Fund project that has expanded was one of the biggest investments that expanded the last 5 years. The role they're playing in supporting farmers to become more productive in their work. Or the example that we have of Gabiro irrigation farm, which is also one that has a number of government investments, private sector support, but most importantly, creating environment for 11 investors to come and grow their products there on irrigated land. So investments, I think, for me, is really one important one. The second one that I want to talk about is innovations. We really need to support innovation even in agriculture. And one of Rwanda's priorities is also innovation. If you look at the work that we're doing with Kigali Innovation City, really putting in place an ecosystem for innovations, one of the sectors that we think will be thriving from this ecosystem once it's fully in place is agri-tech. Really having young entrepreneurs and innovators come up with ideas that can help solve some of the challenges we have in agriculture. And one of the examples that I like to give is Charis drones that is using imaging with their drones, to look at farmers and getting data and analyzing data a lot more efficiently, which data can support farmers to have better crop yields just because they were able to use drones for that purpose. So what other innovations can we support? Who else can we support that is coming up with good ideas? I was talking to the minister earlier, for example, about the Black Soldiers protein, piloting that some project is undertaking today. What else can we do as an innovation, as part of the Kigali Innovation City, but also transforming agriculture? I think that's also really important. The third and last point, Anizi, that I want to talk about is the role of partnerships. And this is very much to emphasize the discussion that most people have had this morning, which is multi-sector approach. If you look at solutions that have been able to be put in place, it has really been because all the partners have played their part, whether it's government, development partners, private sector. One of the favorite examples I like to give is the African Improved Foods that we know here in Rwanda, fortified foods, but which was only made possible because multi-sector players came together to make it happen. You had the government of Rwanda that created the environment for the investment to happen in Rwanda, put in some investment, but also gave a commitment to offtake some of the baby food for our malnourished children. That's one. We had that World Food Program, a UN partner, come in to buy the products and really support to make it viable. Then you had DSM, a private company that came in to really bring their way of doing things for the private sector to make that happen. And many others. You have farmers who also had to really improve their own productivity and for example, to make sure that the maize that they were producing did not have aflatoxins, and they had to play a part to make sure that that was also good quality. So without this multi-sector approach, we would not have had the success that we see today in African improved foods. So just to emphasize that, in addition to attracting investors and investments, in addition to really supporting innovations, we really must be thinking about how we create an environment for all the stakeholders to play a role. And maybe the last example I'll finish with is RICA. Philanthropy also has a role to play. So you have government, you have private sector, you have development partners, you have farmers, but also philanthropy. And we're seeing increasingly giving an opportunity to philanthropy to also come in and play its part. One of the examples that we think is really the most recent from agriculture is the National Irrigation Cooperative, as well as the RICA, the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture, which was made possible from a philanthropist, the Howard Buffett Foundation. And now with that, seeing students study, soil conservation, work with cooperatives, private sector, at the end of the day, really thinking how do we have conservation agriculture as a practice, and for businesses is really important. So I'll just finish with emphasizing that kind of collaboration, but also putting in place a system or a platform where this multi-sector collaboration happens, and I think government can play a role in really even convening or really supporting that kind of collaboration is really important. And we see RDB as playing a key role in each of those, especially on bringing private sector on board as well. Thank you, Anizi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think you just emphasized what Dr. Mayaki said earlier, that this will really require multi-stakeholder collaboration, and you just shared it in a very elaborate way of how various, government, private sector, philanthropies, everybody has a role to play in this. And then also, you touched on innovation. I know on the agenda we have the discussion on the Kigali Food Campus, which would be another hub for innovation specifically in the food sector. So I want to attempt to summarize, but I'll go to the Private Sector Federation. We have, Stephen Ruzibiza, and could you reflect on the possibilities for co-creating responsible yet mutually beneficial commercial engagements with governments and communities? Like, what is the role of the, private sector in this, and how can we, collaborate with the government and communities in bringing it to life?
Thank you so much, honorable ministers, development partners, colleagues, and members of private sector who are in the room, if any. Are you there? Yeah, now that is the role so far. Yeah, thank you so much. Not distant far, agriculture sector was one of the high-risk sectors in terms of private sector engagement because of its nature. High cost, infrastructure complicated, and in terms of investment, it wasn't that promising because the return on investment is not that much involved. And then there were policies that were not favoring agriculture investment. That is some time back. But today, because of what is happening globally, the attention is coming to the agriculture sector. And that's when the private sector relevance and role comes at the forefront. You could see today from private sector participation, initially it used to be a sector for people who have failed in business. When you failed in city, you would go back, resort back to the village, probably to run away from the limelight of the peers. The youth, it has been a great effort to encourage youth to go into agriculture. And it used to be a sector for retiring people, people who are going back to eat their pensions. And they didn't do it at the great extent again for the benefit of the society. And all that has changed today. And private sector today has really gone back and investing. We have people who are in the seed multiplication, post-harvest investment, irrigation, and other sectors. So the role of private sector is really appreciated, and the good thing is coming up for recognition and participation. But all that has, again, happened because of policies, policy change. Policy change in a way that, one, it facilitates private sector investment. a long-term investment because agriculture is really a high-risk sector, as I said. You are depending on the climate change. We have race insurance policies that are coming up. Financing is not, even today, I don't think the financial sector has yet picked up the investing in agriculture. They are still looked at as a risk-end area where they have to take caution and precautions. It is then requires the government to come on board and work with the private sector. But in terms of participation, I don't think there's any country which has achieved its agricultural target without having private sector on board. And it's because the private sector is going to play the game for a long period, and therefore the role of private sector is really needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think everybody who's speaking is re-emphasizing what the previous speaker talked about. I think you just emphasized what Claire had talked about of, bringing together the various sectors. We'll go to Ms. Kumba, who's the country representative of FAO. And we know that, collaboration and partnerships are key pillars in the work of the United Nations in country. And having convened the UN Food Systems Summit in 2021, the UN Secretary General has reaffirmed the work of the UN country teams to be that of supporting collaboration to drive the implementation of the food system transformation agenda. Would you be in a position to share a joint statement on behalf of their own base agencies here and use this opportunity to showcase some ways the UN system is working to support Rwanda's food system priorities?
Honorable Minister, dear CEO RDB, dear PSF private sector, and dear CTA of the Minister of Trade, my AGRF and AGRA colleagues and FDB and all participants of this very important workshop, as far as the UN is concerned, indeed. The stock-taking moment will take place very soon. It's 26 July in the premises of FAO in Rome. It will be hosted by the 3 Rome-based agencies, as we call them, FAO, IFAD, and WFP. The UN Food System Coordination Hub, and of course, the Secretary General of the United Nations. And we are very pleased that Rwanda has decided to participate, not only having the convener, the CTA, Eric Gatera, participating, but also sending even higher level delegation with the permanent secretary of the ministry. This is happening 2 years after the Food System Summit. And the idea is, of course, to look at what progress has been made, to look at what are the challenges, and I'm very happy that many of them were mentioned by Dr. Mayaki in his statement. And of course, look at what are the actions that we need to take to move forward for, as we say, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive food systems. And I'm very happy that when Adam was talking of the objectives of the workshop, he mentioned 3 times in the objectives investments. What does it mean? It means that we are not anymore talking of the semantic of food systems. Actually, 2 years later, we should not be talking anymore about it. We should be already into the implementation, finding financing for the food systems. And for that reason, I want to go back very quickly, though, to the fundament, because we mentioned it. Sir David Nabarro mentioned it. What are the food systems seems sometimes to be foggy for people, while we are already working within food systems in countries. The fundament is saying that all the elements, and I quote them, environment, people, inputs, processes, infrastructure, institutions, and many others, and activities that related to the production, processing, distribution, preparation, and consumption of food, and the output that are related to these activities, and that include socio-economic, and that include environmental outcomes. Why is it important to just remember that? Is to say that all the examples that have been given here before, they are working within this fundament of the food system, which is the official definition by the Secretary General. So continuity, alignment, integration, making sure that all elements that are missing within the food system are taken into account. That is the role of the United Nations. That's what we were asked by the Secretary General within our specific mandates. For instance, when we talk of IFAD, my colleague of IFAD will be looking exclusively investments. What are the investments that are needed in the food systems? When it comes to WFP, we will be looking at specifically the food specificities that are needed to respond very quickly to issues like stunting, for instance. And today, Honorable Minister mentioned it about the Sustainable Development Goal and the Goal 2. We are not about to meet the Goal 2. This we already know. And I would like here to though, because we are still in the fundament here, to quote the Pope Francis during the meeting that was taking place in Rome 2 weeks ago, and Honorable Minister attended. He said the inability to fulfill our responsibilities must not lead us to turn away from our original intentions. And what is our original intentions when we talk of food systems? It's food security, and it's 4 dimensions. And I would like to mention a few points on those 4 drivers. The first one is availability. The second is accessibility, utilization, and stability. When we talk of availability, and I'm very happy that Claire mentioned it, the need for innovation, science, technologies that are so needed to accelerate production. And Rwanda is known for being at the forefront and being very avant-gardist when it comes to innovation that will help us actually to strengthen agriculture production availability than the food systems. Affordability of diet is extremely important. We can have the food, we can produce in it. Are people able to access that food? Are people able to get what supply and demand is there? And here also, I would like to give another example of what is being done by ministries already to make sure that food is affordable. I think the Minister for Trade and Agriculture have been involved in looking specifically if the prices of food within the markets are according to what has been decided, making sure it's stabilized, going market, store by store, shops by shop. Actually, this is how the integration of the work is being done. The concept of trade, because as I speak of the Minister of Trade, and how optimal combination of local production, local consumption, regional and global production is very important. And there we don't look at only the national food systems, we look at the global food system. And there also I'm seeing Rwanda being very involved and engaged in the AFCFTA, which is critical today when we talk of leadership at continental level. And then I will go to the next point, which is, to me, one of the most important, utilization when we talk of Rwanda. The issue of stunting has been very, very often being discussed at the highest level, which is extremely good because it's really taking the issue at the core and making sure that we bring solution. And what has happened shows also the multi-dimension of the response that is being provided within the food system. It's 4 ministries who are working on a strategy to tackle the issue of stunting. The strategy was launched, I think, 2 months ago. Minister for Gender and Family Promotion, Minister for Agriculture, Minister for Local Government, and Health, to make sure that all the elements that I mentioned within the food system concept are tackled to respond to the issue of stunting. Just to finish, I'd like to mention how we as the UN, we see the collaboration with the government being very effective and leading to success, I have to say. And I will take one example of the school feeding program, which has been piloted by WFP not only in Rwanda, in many, many countries around the world. But the success that we are seeing in Rwanda, where actually the government is taking over from the successful pilot, include it in its national program and its national budget, funding it, and of course calling on partners, and particularly on private sector. When we look at issues like school feeding program, very often, as it's a social program, it's very difficult to see where the private sector should be coming in. While when we talk of providing food, transporting food, processing food, and so on, private sector is extremely important. Another example that I want to provide also, how the UN system is supporting the food systems in Rwanda. It has been mentioned by the Ministry of Trade. Healthy diet is important, affordable diet, but affordable, healthy diet. And until we are sure that what we consume is safe, the food system are not enough improved. We can have available food, we can have the quantities that we need, but if they are not producing a healthy population, we are not getting there. And we are very happy to accompany the Ministry of Trade to do the full assessment of the food systems, to see where are the gaps in terms of food safety, in terms of phytosanitary, in terms of standard, in terms of certifications, and make sure that we address them. So just to conclude on the role of the UN in accompanying a government in improving its food systems, it's where the gap lies that we can intervene and support the government. We look forward to the participation of Rwanda to the food stock taking moment in Rome, because it will help Rwanda to expose before its peers what is happening in the country, to learn from other countries, because they will also be presenting the issues they are facing, the challenges, and how they are also trying to fix them. And that will help us when they come back, and we do look forward to really work on the recommendations they will get from that moment to accelerate, because it's about investment and accelerating. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kumba. I really like the way you started when you shared that we need to go beyond the semantics of food systems, understanding this approach, which is, very important, and go to the implementation and the investments. And you've, taken time to share with us the different UN agencies and what you're doing to actually bring different pieces of this to life. So thank you so much. We want to turn to Honorable Minister Musafiri. Having heard the remarks from the Ministry of Trade, the remarks from Rwanda Development Board, the remarks from FAO, Private Sector Federation, I think they are really painting the spectra of the need for multi-stakeholder collaboration, which you also talked about in your initial remarks. The Minister of Agriculture is the convener, but you've discussed how you're not the only one bringing this agenda to life. Could you reflect on what you've heard and how you see this supporting your agenda moving forward?
Thank you. First of all, let me, what they have said is only just to continue to my satisfaction as the Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources. Let me start by the principles that the President of the Republic has established that we guide this country moving ahead. 3, he said we should think big. And second is to be united, come together as a nation. Then the last, to be accountable. So I want to come back on this, the middle one, the unity, the coming together. So coming together, he brought these because it's the choice the country made after the tragedies we went through. And we had to come together as the nation. But it's not only that, we would like to extend it again to some other aspect in everything we do. This implementation of this complicated theory of food systems, we can't do it alone as well. I think many speakers mentioned that. We can't do it alone as the Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources. And also, this coming together as well. In this context of food systems, implementation or domestication or operationalization. So when I was doing my high school in the primary teacher, I'm a teacher actually. In the primary teacher training schools, we're told that if you are learning a theory without practice, it's like steroids. How do you say in English? Something's not productive. The theory without practice is blind. So you can't practice with it, but also if you have a practice without theory, so you don't know where to go. So now, the food system has been a good concept as the UN has established it and it convened, and then the new way of thinking. But when it comes to the theory is very much clear, comprehensive, and we have to make sure that we produce, not only produce, but sustain the environment, but also make sure what you produce is nutritious, and also we make it affordable, and we make it available, and inclusive. And this brings all stakeholders together, because in the previous people used to work in the silo. Maybe I stand on the panel. This coming together now, I'm talking about having people on this panel from the Ministry of Trade to the private sector on the panel, having them together. Then the partner, FAO, then the investment, RDB, the ministry, and you, food systems. At least this panel, it's a sign. And you partners who are here, I think we are representing you, but not everybody can be here, but I think everybody have a time to come here. So at least it's a sign for me. I said it's a contribute to my satisfaction, because now at least I was able to bring everybody together in one room. I think this is a meeting of its kind. It's a first anyway. It's not the first under my tenure as a minister. I don't know if you had this before, but the first of its kind in my tenure. It seems that at least we are there. We have just landed. Now we can craft something that can work for us by this inclusiveness, by this operationalization of food systems. So imagine having this audience Monday morning. It's unusual. So there's some disease that attacks people on Monday when they come from the weekend. So for me, it's beyond my expectations. So having these people from the weekend, early in the morning, I have seen the email, Adam calling them around 8 a.m. I was saying, so I don't know, but the traffic jam, everything, but everybody managed except me. So I would like to thank you so much. So I would like to thank you so much for this. For me, this gives me strength and courage to continue, because Rwanda can lead it domesticate, can work together with our partners, and we can accelerate and advance these food systems through private sector mobilization, through investment, through trade. And I think in the future we'll be having also the Minister of Health. We should have also the Minister of Environment. And we should have also the Minister of Gender, to make sure the inclusiveness is catered for, to make sure the environment is taken care of, because we need to also sustain the environment through agriculture. So that's the thing, that's the spirit. And this is what we are understanding, and we are formatting through your contribution, your participation in these 2 days. We are formatting a message that we are taking to Rome to showcase what Rwanda is doing, what it's trying to do, and from there, we also try to attract people who come join us and finance any company they want to finance. But we should have a structure that works, a framework that works, and we wish this kind of forum be regular. And as long as we will affect as well, we move forward, so that we may be able to make sure we are on the right track, and we pioneer. We pioneer these food systems transformation as a country. I thank you. I think this is my reflection on that. I'm just happy for this forum, and I can't wait to have more.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. You mentioned that we have a very rich audience with various partners, and it would be a mistake if I don't invite some people to ask any questions while we still have the attention of the panel. So we're going to take 2 questions, quick questions from the audience. Please share it, and then we can decide who on the panel would be best to address it. Do you have any questions, Adam? Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm Daniel from SNV Rwanda. Honorable Minister and other panelists, thank you for the nice presentation. Yes, you were mentioning many things about the food system transformation. Yet, you mentioned about the inclusivity, about the institutional inclusivity. And then how about the food system inclusiveness? Do you think youth or women may be engaged in this so that we can have a fully food system transformation? Thank you for this.
Thank you for your question. Do we have one more?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Eme Kwizela. I'm the country representative for Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition in Rwanda. My question goes to the Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Minister of Agriculture. We mentioned, or we've talked about food systems. And I remember David Nabalo in his opening remarks mentioned about the need for nutrition in the food systems. How do we make it accessible, food accessible and consumed by the most vulnerable populations? So my question is, as the Ministry of Agriculture, what do you expect from us partners to support on food systems transformation, looking at upcoming PSTA 5? Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think both questions sounds like they're going to the Honorable Minister. One was about what you expect from partners. Another one is how to make this more inclusive. Unless Ms. Kumba is looking at me, unless you have a comment about the inclusion piece, but Honorable Minister can address the questions.
Yeah, thank you. I think the inclusiveness we talk about is not only institutional, but also these groups of people. That's why I mentioned we should have also the Minister of Gender and others. So how can you do food system for getting youth and women? It's almost impossible. This will not work at all. So that's why the inclusiveness we're talking about includes not only institutional, but also gender and youth and people with disabilities. So then that's the only way we can win this battle. And I think some of the partners here, I have some who have some good projects to come. Like AGRA, you know, AGRA, they're active in this, even they are changing to Food Systems Alliance, not only Green Revolution. I think Green Revolution is moving, is passing away, I don't know. So, but now, they also have a project that's coming, just for youth, creating a youth employment in agriculture. More than 100,000 jobs in agriculture. I think, speaking of youth, also we bring in women. So now, what do you expect from you, partners? I think there are many, but at this particular time, is you to do the right interventions. To do the right intervention at the moment. So now, as some are maybe financial, others are not just interacting with our people, others coming. So now we want to do the right and coordinated investment in food systems. Because most of you are here, you have the common denominator. We have something to do with agriculture. We have something to do with the animal resources. So we have to do something to do with a kind of relationship with the Minister of Agriculture. We want now to move in the same direction, and we are now we want you to come in the same boat, in the same flight, and make sure we move in the same direction. So that like the body, make sure you come to become one part of the body. So we don't want you to go alone, because if you go alone, maybe you miss some. We don't want any scattered intervention. We want to do coordinated and harmonized interventions, and do the right finance, do the right intervention, do the right training. So you have to. They have all the interventions have to converge in food systems transformation. So that's, I think, what I would say at the moment. But maybe we need some specific interventions or expectation which may be different from by a partner.
I think
Thank you, Minister. If I could just add a comment or two on what the Minister said. One, I think this project, the Kigali Food Campus, is supposed to be an innovation hub for food systems. And if you talk about innovation, you cannot exclude the youth. Because what we've seen is that many of these ideas that we're having in the country, people that are willing to try and fail, many times these are the youth. So I think if we just, for example, support this project to happen, the Kigali Food Campus, really allow innovators, especially the youth, to come and try out the ideas. I think that's one place that we can really see the youth included, and I think it's a big project can actually achieve that. I also want to give a comment on what else can partners do. We've been talking about investment and how we want to include the private sector. I think it's important as part of this discussion to come out with what are some of the things that we still need to do. I always say that the government of Rwanda is always very willing to do reforms, but sometimes we don't know what to do. So if you make it easy for us and help us to identify what are the challenges or the issues, the barriers that we need to do across the value chain, whether it's irrigation, mechanization, farmers, productivity, etc. What is it that we can do to address those issues and help us identify those? When it comes to what the government of Rwanda can do, as you heard from the Minister of Agriculture, it's something that we shall put a lot of effort in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you. Let's give them another round of applause. You can please regain your seats. Thank you, thank you. All right, so we are done with this part of the morning. We have coffee outside, and we're trying to stick to time so that we end today on time. It's 11, and I'd like us to take 15 minutes, connect with who you want to connect with, grab a coffee, and then we'll come back at 11:15. But our panel was very good. We've learned so much about how we can collaborate. The government is willing. We just have to support the government as they support us to move this agenda forward. Thank you so much. It's break time. We'll be back here at 11:15.